Hi, everyone, and welcome to Turning Point, Stories and Strategies from the World of Business. And I'm Blaine Birch, your host, CEO of Dryrun. And today joining me is Mike Milan. And Mike and I have known each other for a while now. Right now, one of his nicknames is Cashflow Mike. And of course, that's how we know each other, because Dryrun, where I'm from, is all about cash flow, helping companies manage their cash flow. And of course, Mike and I have the same passion of helping businesses do the same thing. But today we're actually going to dive into some of Mike's background and some of the great stories of his experiences over the years of building business and growing business. And so, Mike, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Hey, Blaine, I'll tell you what, I'm excited to be here. And believe it or not, I am one of the people that is a signed copy of your book, Pandemic Cashflow. I'm one of those people that has one on my shelf and I've referred to it. Great book. I encourage people to go check it out.
Well, yeah, thanks for the plug, Mike. And Mike is also an author. And actually, when we get to the end of the podcast here, Mike's going to tell you about some of the stuff he's working on today and plug all the stuff that he's working on too in his book. So anyway, I wanted to dive back into a bit of your past, Mike, about where did you get started? How did you get into this sort of business or entrepreneurial world and dive right in here?
Well, Blaine, I got to tell you, I probably have the messiest resume on the podcast. That's just how it works, right? I mean, people would ask me all the time. I'd be teaching bankers is just one of the things I've done. And they say, how do I get to do what you do? I'm like going, I don't think you can get here from there. So it's one of those things. Yeah. I like to tell people my first job. I didn't think I would be in business. I didn't think that this is what I'd be doing. You know, like any of us at 18, 19, 20 years old. I went through a military academy. Joined the Army National Guard and did 16 years there. But my first job right out of college was I was a state trooper in St. Louis, Missouri. Right? So,
okay, I didn't know that.
Wait a second. You were a state trooper? Yeah, that's right. I mean, I was fighting crime, right? Fighting crime and chasing bad guys and those type of things. And I did that for 7 years, right? So and I thought I could see my whole future in front of me. Matter of fact, the Highway Patrol was really good about telling you how much you would make. Because they had a chart that says every year you're going to make this much, and I could see my whole life in front of me. So, yeah, that's kind of where I started, right? So,
so how did you make a transition into business from there? Like, what dragged you away from that and into this other world?
Blaine, I tell you what, it was money.
Okay, that's a good answer.
Yeah, but I like to tell people, I said it wasn't just money. It was the very fact that my family outgrew my income.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I've got 3 beautiful daughters, and you know, because I had college, I had some college debt, like some people do, and we were writing out a student loan payment, and you know, I looked at it and I says, how come I don't use this degree? Why don't I use that? You know, maybe I should. You know, I've got an MBA from Baylor University here in Texas, and why don't I use the education that I have? So that's kind of what made me interested in getting into business. Was the very fact that I had, you know, my 3rd daughter and was looking for ways to, you know, increase my income.
Yeah. So what did that draw you to? What was your first endeavor out of law enforcement there?
Well, you know, I went into the janitorial business.
Okay.
Yeah. So I went from chasing bad guys to cleaning urinals. But the very funny thing is that you know, I was allowed a little piece of the business. I had a guy kind of front load, getting an office up and going, and we built a really successful business. You know, he gave me 10% of the business right off the bat, which allowed me to kind of stack some cash because he tripled my salary, what I was making with the state, gave me 10% of the business, and I was able to start accumulating some funds. But after 3 years, we built just a small business doing about almost $3 million a year in business in just janitorial work. And I found a better way, right? Rather than doing the work, I became on my own. I broke off from him and became a staffing provider, right? Which is, I built what's called a hotel staffing business. I met some folks that were general managers in a hotel business, and they said, you know what, you never seem to have a problem finding people. We always have a problem finding people. Can you help us? And I'm like going, you mean all I got to do is recruit and not do the work?
Nice. Yeah.
So I built a hotel staffing company. And I'll tell you, that's where everything changed. You the hotel staffing company.
Okay.
Because in 3 years, Blaine, I opened 27 offices across 9 states.
Wow.
Had 500 indirect employees, and became a preferred provider for Marriott hotels, and really built a really nice business. And they're just staffing hotels.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and what I love about that is the just the entrepreneurial story is seeing opportunity and grabbing it, and it's not always. There's a lot of times it isn't in some specific area of interest, or it's just there's an opportunity and it's a great one, and I can see it, and I love that.
Yeah. Well, it's not anything that I could have planned on, and I'm sure, like many other people, they just become either passionate about something or they see the opportunity, and you take advantage of it, right? Like when I think I can actually build a business around this idea.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, and that was just another line in your resume. What, where did you go from there? And I know, because I got to know you initially when you were just left a Cashflow tool. So I know there's this path getting all the way up to there. Like, what all did you sort of do during those years?
Well, believe it or not, Wayne, I've built 12 companies now. So I became
Nice.
an adrenaline junkie, right? Once they become real and they start making money, then I get bored.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think that could be the record though of 12. That's you set a high bar there, man. That's great.
I wouldn't suggest it to anybody. You've got to have an iron gut to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's I can't even imagine it.
Well, Blaine, I'll tell you though, just like your podcast is named Turning Point, it was the actual hotel staffing company that was my turning point, right?
Okay. Yeah.
That first 18 months, I took no salary. So savings dwindled. I think I was down to less than $10,000 in cash all the way around. I'd had a home equity line. I was just trying to push it, but it wasn't the growth. It wasn't the success. I was actually experiencing what they call growing broke, right? I was growing so fast that I didn't understand, believe it or not, cash flow. So how do you become cash flow, Mike? You actually go through some problems and have some cash flow problems, right? and start to take it seriously. And with me, it was payroll, right? I had, we'll say 500 employees working. You've got to make payroll every other week, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm billing the hotel where I may have to make payroll every 2 weeks, but I not get paid for a month and a half, or 45 days or 60 days out, right? So there's a gap. Yeah. There's a gap between when I'm paying and when I'm getting paid. So my first problem to solve, my first turning point was solve that issue, right? Solve the problem.
Yeah. That's obviously really familiar story that we hear every day, and it's timing is the biggest pinch point. It's a lot of times it's not the bottom dollar, it's not profitability, it's just timing of those dollars in and out, and that's a perfect example. And it's like, man, that's 500 employees sitting there waiting for money. That's a tall, a stressful thing to carry on your shoulders every 2 weeks, So yeah.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, I'll call it the turning point because, again, I was down to less than $10,000. I wasn't going to be able to make payroll. At that point in time, you're just in desperation mode. I was actually preparing a resume, like, going, okay, I'm going to have to fold this thing and do something else. Instead, I called everybody, right? I called all my, I'm just like, I'm going to put some of my burden on my customer. just started calling them and saying, hey, listen, I know that you treat my invoice like any other invoice. Like maybe you got a case of paper towels and you just sit on it and pay it whenever you want to. But I need for you to treat this like it's your own employee, like it's your own payroll. And I was able to, just by really desperation and asking, move an AR collection period, or my receivables period, from over 60 days to 45 days in a matter of 2 months. And it was just those phone calls and asking them to change their mindset about my invoice that changed everything. Money just came in faster, and it just took the pressure off, right, as money was coming in.
Yeah, it's amazing what happens when you talk with your customers, and we talk about it all the time. Like there's these sort of big strategies and tactics and things that you can do. And so often we just talk about just get on the phone and talk with your customers and talk with your suppliers. And, and what I had a similar story, way back in, the recession in 2008, 2009. That's what I always say is what led to Dryrun was my experience with dealing with cash flow at that point. And the way we worked our way through it was we talked with every one of our customers. We figured out which ones would have money down the road and which were shutting down, and we could shift our focus. And then there was this massive amount of negotiation on every job. But the biggest part of it was the payment schedule, how we got paid and when, because we had to have that cash flow coming in. We just didn't have the money there to float them. And it was having those conversations. And when you're offering value to your clients, it's amazing. They'll talk with you and they'll negotiate and they'll help you out because they want to use you and they want to help. And great piece of advice. And it's amazing to see it, work for other people too. Just hop on the phone.
Well, and I'll tell you what, I also got lucky because before that happened, before I called them and begged, I tried a different route, which actually turned out okay, which was I was in a receivables-based business. I was getting paid about every 60 days. I'm like going, how do I offset that? Well, maybe I add some cash business to it, right? Something that's bringing in cash every day. And I couldn't really find a good supplemental service, right, with what I had. But what I ran across was an opportunity to get into a cash-based business. But before I bought a business like that, I looked at flower shops. I looked at, motorcycle repair, something where somebody can give me a credit card and they get cash that day. That's what I was just really trying to do, just accumulate cash. Well, I ran across my first restaurant, right? So in 2005, I bought a little bar restaurant, and it was just a cash-based business. And it was really generating, almost $500,000 a year, but giving me personally about $150,000 in cash every single year, coming across the desk.
Great. Yeah.
Awesome thing. I liked it so well that in 2007, and I think you know where this is going, I built a restaurant.
Yeah.
We talk about 2008, 2009. And I was able, so I bought a restaurant, then I built a restaurant, and then I ended up buying a building with a restaurant in it. So then I had 3 restaurants, a hotel staffing company going at once, and then I bought 9 more buildings, and I had supplemental housing for my employees at the same time. It was kind of a cool thing. And if we got time, I'll talk about how it all worked together. But of course, it's your show.
No, I find that interesting and pretty fascinating how you looked at your business overall and all these multiple businesses, how they kind of plug into each other and feed each other and make the whole thing rise. I find that really interesting, rather than just starting here and there. There seemed to be a method to the madness.
Well, to me, it started with the process, right? I mean, if you look at the statistics, and 8 out of 10 businesses fail, right off the bat. Well, most of it's because it's a process. You look at franchises, and franchises only about 2 out of 10 fail. Well, why? Because they've got everything in place. So I'm like, okay, that's the way I'm going to run my business. I had a military mindset, as we kind of discussed earlier. I'm just going to put everything into a process. So every hotel, we had the same process of how we ordered, invoiced, sourced candidates. But then I took the same thing to every restaurant. We had the same POS system. We had the same, all the coolers were set up the same. All the walk-in coolers were set up the same, meaning, we had Bud Light, Miller Lite, Coors Light, all everything in the same spot. So I could move people around and they didn't have to relearn the setup of the restaurant. The other thing was with the hotels, when people didn't have enough hours, because sometimes they're not full, I could take the housekeepers, or I could take, the wait staff or whatever out of the hotels and put them into the restaurant, right? So,
okay, wow. Yeah.
I could keep people working and reduce turnover that way. The other thing I did was we had the property management, just really basically 1 and 2 bedroom apartments with really low rent for employees. They could just pay the rent out of their check for the most part. And what we did was we allowed employees to stay there, but I had a 2-man repair crew for the apartments that also fixed the restaurants. So it was just an exercise in scheduling your whole work staff and keeping people active. My biggest challenge, with having that many employees, Blaine, was that I had to hire supervisors whose job was just to make sure people went to work. Right? I mean, people will call up and say, "Hey, I don't have a babysitter. I can't go." I said, "No problem. We got 10 babysitters on staff." we would
Nice.
we would solve problems. I mean, that's kind of what we
Yeah.
did.
And so then this you said was around like the 2008, 2009. How did you weather that storm? Did you make it through okay, or was it a big challenge for you guys?
The restaurant that I built struggled with cash flow, and I actually had built up enough by then, right? I mean, when I was failing was in the early 2000s, where I said it was down to $10,000, and then by 2007-8, I had accumulated some cash, right, with the first restaurant and the hotel staffing business, because I had worked myself through the receivables problem. By 2008-9, I actually had enough cash I could make it through, and just kind of I used the other two restaurants to support the one that was failing.
Okay.
And as it came out in 2010, I sold the failing restaurant, right? So I kind of let somebody else. It's just because it had drained a lot of money, and I was supporting it with the other businesses, and that's where I came up, with the idea that it's a sideshow venture. It wasn't something that I was particularly good at, and it had just sucked a bunch of cash and attention from my other businesses. So I had to just kind of cut it out. It's like cutting a sore off, or healing a sore.
Yeah.
Is basically what we did.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did you go from that to software? Because that's where I sort of know you from, right? Like, it's I'm just curious how that sort of worked out.
Yeah, in 2011, I got approached to buy, right? Because I had a good process going. I took housekeepers and moved them around. So I got bought, and the person bought the hotel staffing company and bought 2 of the restaurants and a couple of the buildings just to keep everything intact. So I sold off my biggest portion, and I'll be frank, for about 3 months, I played golf and kind of sat on my cash and kind of relaxed. And then I got the opportunity to do some consulting in Seattle. I was living in St. Louis prior, and did some consulting in Seattle for a nonprofit that actually helps reduce recidivism. Right, so they take people that are transitioning out of either prison or jail and find job opportunities for them. Right, so they had a manufacturing plant that they were putting people through, but they could only do 2,000, 2,500 people a year in this manufacturing plant. But there's 10,000 people coming out of the Washington State, correctional system. So they said, we got to find more ways to help people. So I went out there and helped this company develop 3 other small businesses. Right, one of them was a staffing company, which was just labor for hire. Right, you need somebody to move rocks, we got people to move rocks. It didn't matter. The second one was an apartment maintenance team, right? Because the company that I was working for had 65 buildings where they also had subsidized housing. So I put together a apartment maintenance team that trained people how to go rehabilitate or restore or reset all of these apartments. And then we started selling those teams out to other apartment complexes, right? So then I had outsourced labor to other other apartment complexes. The third thing was really interesting. This company had underwent a bed bug problem. It was when bed bugs were a big problem on the West Coast, and they were, in libraries, they were in hotels, they were in their apartments, those type of things. So they ran across the opportunity to get a dog. Right, they just got a dog that could smell, just like drug sniffing dogs or bomb sniffing dogs. There are bed bug sniffing dogs.
Okay, I had no idea. Okay.
But so they had a dog or so. So what we did is we put together a business. We went and had 2 dogs working, and we would sell contracts to outsource companies, other apartment complexes, the library, federal buildings, those type of things, where we would make routine monthly or quarterly sweeps. Because once bed bugs are in there, if you catch them faster, it's a smaller cost to remediate them versus if you let them infest. I mean, it's a huge thousands upon thousands of dollars. So that was the third business. So we got those up and running. I created about, 200-300 jobs doing that. And while I was in Seattle, I ran across the owner, CEO, and founder of Finagraph. And I knew small business. He was building small business software. He goes, "What do you know about software?" I said, "I know how to use it." And he goes, "Well, at least you can talk the game, and help us understand the customer better," because he was looking for somebody that had a small business background to be able to put the right features into the product. And as you mentioned, Cashflow tool. I mean, we did build Cashflow tool But Cashflow tool was really the 6th product that was built, right? They had a couple of banking, mostly banking products, and they had 2 accountant business owner products. One was the original Finograph dashboard doing analytics, and the other one was Cashflow tool, again, doing, something similar to Dryrun as well.
Yeah. So I still can't believe how many like connections and things that like how many businesses you said 12, but I'm just connecting the dots on how that went forward, and I'm finding it really fascinating, and how many people you've literally employed and touched over those years is just quite amazing to just have started and jump in and have done so much.
I can only say it's really fortunate, right? Because if I look back, it's just always meeting the right person at the right time in my life. When I was ready to transition, there was an opportunity. I mean, like all of us in the beginning, you're just trying to survive, just trying to do something. And what that became was, because I had encountered so many different issues, I could talk about them, right? And when I got up to Seattle, we were selling software to banks, and the way I was describing the problems to banks, they actually liked, right? Which was, hey, we wish all of our small business owners understood the business like you. And so we're like going, why don't we train them? why don't we train them? So, I mean, that's basically what we started doing is I started training bankers and business owners how to work together by teaching bankers how to have a conversation at a non-sophisticated financial mind level, right? I mean, business owners aren't dumb. They just don't understand the terminology and concepts that a banker and investor might use. So you got to find what you're good at. Yeah.
It's interesting to the way, you talked about always sort of meeting the right people at the right time. And it reminds me so much that in the business world and even as we're going more and more digital and online, it's relationships that mean so much. Relationships with your clients, relationships with colleagues, but I don't even like to use the term networking. It's not networking, it's relationships that make such a big difference where that's how you find opportunities. And so often it seems like luck. It's because you've built all these relationships, and it's 1 out of 100 that rather than this one in front of you. And this just shows how important it is to be just a good person, meeting good people and building that community up, I guess. So
I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's just, you meet so many people. It's what you do with those interactions, and I think probably what you do, I try to do the same is connect, right? And one of the best ways you connect is just listen. Listen to them, right? Listen to them, understand where they're coming from. And I haven't always been the best at that. As a trooper, I was terrible at listening. I was great at telling. I was terrible at listening. I think I'm better at listening now than I used to be.
But still a useful tool in the pack, though, to have that, be able to push a bit when you have to. So that's not a bad thing. But and I this has been a really interesting story. But I'm also interested in sort of what you're doing now. Like you've done all these things. You've got all this expertise. You now Cashflow Mike. What does that mean? What are you doing today?
Well, I mean, first of all, I'll address the nickname, right? Cashflow Mike. It was what the banks started calling me, and the banks and the people at Finograph started calling me because I just preached cash flow. And it just came from that personal experience I just talked about is, hey, I was making money on paper. I was making profit, but I couldn't pay my bills. I was struggling. I was like not paying myself even, sometimes. So I'm like going, it's not profit, it's cash flow that I have to pay attention to. And it's about how cash keeps there. So because of the evangelistic nature of cash, and you'll stay alive if you can manage your cash, I think that's where Cashflow Mike came in. And you know what? I leaned into it. I'm like going, it's kind of cool. I like it. So I picked it up. Well, last year, not last year, 2 years ago, when I left the other software company, I fell in love. Right. That's basically what happened. Is I'd been dating and I fell in love, and Courtney, the woman I fell in love with, lives in San Antonio, Texas. So I moved from Seattle to San Antonio to just build a life with her, right? And because I'd moved, 1,800 miles away, it didn't make sense for me to stay a full-time employee up at the other company in Seattle, right? So I took what I was doing, I took the contacts that I had, and built a program called the Clear Path to Cash, right? And what that is it's an 8-step program for maximizing cash in any given business situation. And that's really what it was. So I've got a video training course that I built. The company's name is Elevate Financial Training. You can, download free resources. I've got tools and templates and Excel spreadsheets and things like that. I got the video course. As you mentioned, I've got a couple of books coming out. One of them is called Don't Be a Dumb Business Owner.
Nice. Perfect.
Yeah, but dumb, I don't want people to think that I'm calling people dumb, because it's not unintelligent. It's D period, U period, M period, B period, which is don't understand my business. I don't want you to be the type of guy that doesn't understand your business. So I don't want to be a dumb business owner. And that actually goes through every step. So if you don't like video and you still like to read, or you like to have that resource, the book comes out, any day now. It's ready. I just got to get it out there. The other one's called the 7-Minute Conversation. I don't know if you ever heard this, but it's one of my most popular speaking seminars. When the trade shows ask me to come speak, and most people want me to do the 7-minute conversation. What that is how to understand your business in 7 minutes a month, right? And it's in the Clear Path to Cash. It's part of what I call the home run financial system. And what the home run financial system is it's a set of 6 different calculations that you can do that touch all the bases, which means the income statement, the cash flow statement, and the balance sheet. Most of us just look at one or the other, not all 3. This ties them all together and helps you interpret your company. So been doing that. I've got a podcast called The Clear Path to Cash. And I'll tell you what, you talked about relationships, and I know I'm kind of windy right now, but I got a really exciting news that we're going to share on the 17th, 18th of August. But a longtime friend of mine in this business and I formed a company in March. And we have raised some money, and we're building some product that I think will help everybody, including your customers, that I'm excited to announce. I can't tell you now, but it's kind of like that teaser, like a cliffhanger.
Well, terrific. And I just want to let everyone know we're in August 2020 right now, or 2020. So I don't know when you guys are listening to this. So if you're in September, you're near the end of the year, you're in 2021, you're listening to this podcast. Mike's books are probably all available by now, and check out his website, elevatefinancialtraining.com, I think is what. That's right. You can, I'm assuming you can find a bunch of stuff right there and figure out where everything's at and get access to these things. Because that actually those books, I'm looking forward to reading both, because you just, as a business owner, you can never learn enough, and you can never get enough information, and having some just really clear concepts like that. I'm really looking forward to diving into that. So,
speaking of, you know me, I'm a big reader. So here's the 2 that I'm reading right now.
I'm going to look both of those up right after we get off the call here. Actually,
great books. This one about treating people well. I think that's what we were talking about. That's part of the theme of this podcast. And the other one is, all of us can learn how to do marketing a little bit better.
Always, and it's and I think we were talking offline before we kind of hopped on here. That was one of the things that I think I may have mentioned, that it's with, like, right now we're in the middle of this August COVID, and businesses our business owners are pulled in 50 different directions in there, and getting leads and getting out to them, getting the message out to them is a real challenge right now, because they're so distracted. And so any help on the marketing side is always worth looking at for really virtually any business right now.
That's good. Hey, I tell you what, man, I feel like we've been friends forever. This conversation really just flowed really well. I really like the things you guys are doing at Dryrun. I think you're on to something. I think that, you point out the exact issue and the problems that people have, and you're building a great team over there. You've got some great folks working for you. So I appreciate being a part of it.
Well, thanks so much. And I really appreciate your time. This was a really fun conversation, really interesting. And I think there were some absolute nuggets of gold in there that all you guys that are watching this and can draw inspiration from. I know I have just, it's a good reminder sometimes on priorities and just some really interesting little tactics mixed into there as well. So really enjoyed it, Mike. I'm hopefully have you on. You know what? You're going to announce something in August, maybe later into the fall here. We'll have you back on once that's up and running, and we get a bit of an update on how things are going there.
Well, that would be fantastic. And I'm going to take a soundbite of you telling me that I had nuggets of gold, because I'm going to give it to my daughters.
Absolutely.
People think I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free. That's it could be pretty handy for you. So it's I really appreciate having you on. It was a great conversation, Mike, and thank you everyone for joining us. And please tune in to more of our Turning Point podcast. We have just again, just a great bunch of stories and strategies from the world of business, all with people that have lived it and been through the grind and understand the challenges. And thanks again, Mike, for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Hey, great time. Thanks, Blaine. Appreciate it.